From franchises like Saw to Scream to Halloween to The Conjuring and many, many more, horror has cemented itself as a surefire way to make big money while scaring the crap out of people. With gore, jump scares, uncertainty, and freakish villains helps build the intensity and fear adult audiences are meant to face when watching these movies. Keep in mind I said adult audiences because with these movies I listed and many, many more, a large audience is not kept in mind when creating movies like these. Children. Understandably so, the characteristics of horror is not and was not meant for children's eyes to see, but yet like any other genre, horror has found its way to kid audiences. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is an interesting one when you analyze it under the scope and traditions of typical horror films. Plus, it brings up two good questions. How is horror implemented in children films? And is that mix good? The answers are obvious, but indulge me here as I am quickly revamping a script from last year because I needed a quick turnaround idea to be posted on Halloween Day. So let's explore these answers. Hello and welcome back to our channel, Jen Star. This channel is shared and run by two twin sisters, so I'll be your host, Star. And today I'll be discussing the fascinating appeal of children horror films. Interested? Keep watching. And as a note, English captions are available. What is horror? Merriam-Webster defines it as, quote, painful and intense fear, dread, or dismay, end quote. And dictionary.com states, quote, an overwhelming and painful feeling caused by something frightfully shocking, terrifying, or revolting, a shuddering fear, end quote. So it's an overwhelming feeling of fear, dismay, and disgust resulted from shocking, terrifying, and revolting imagery of blood, gore, violence, and physical and psychological torture. But that's my own interpretation. Next, what is children's media? Children's literature sums up content in any way form made for children. From the Library of Congress Collection Policy Statement, they state, quote, children's literature is defined as material written and produced for the information or entertainment of children and young adults. This includes material in all nonfiction, literary, and artistic genres in physical and digital formats, end quote. I think it is important to note that children's content is made in simplistic, easier to understand format, and is also targeted towards parents, since it's adults who will then share this content to their kids if it's deemed age appropriate enough. What I mean is content shown isn't horrific enough for the ratings to be raised anything higher than a PG-13. And it is because of this that corporations target parents for merchandising sales on top of the media that they're reviewing for their kids, because without appealing to that market as well, then children's content in regards to cartoon TV shows, movies, cinematic content, games, etc. won't sell as much. Yet, how can horror and children's content mix in a way that it's able to retain their core values, but also be simplistic and age appropriate enough? Especially when Hollywood policed itself in the early years to be more safe and innocent, aka the Hays Code. Though the Hays Code and its restrictions has ended for decades now, Hollywood, when it comes to children's films, especially those of the animated kind, still display these more innocent barriers for their audiences. So what was Hollywood's workaround to bring children into what you would believe is an impossible genre? Well, I just said it, and there's obviously more ways, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to talk about animation. With a form of media targeted to kids and seen more for that audience, animation opens the doors to these horror stories in a more fun and lighthearted way. Not saying that live action children horror films couldn't do that. It's just animation was more inviting to not just for kids, but to their parents who more than likely police their children's content. Plus, animation's content and cartoons already have a perceived connotation for being for kids. Think Hotel Transylvania, huge success blockbuster franchise financially, so big that movies like this aren't just targeting kids, but their families as well. Sorry for this crappy audio maybe, but I want to interject something here while I'm editing. A lot of, like when I'm scrolling through different streaming services, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Tubi, the Roku channel, Pluto TV, whatever the case is, a lot of the like categories that is listed as like family or like family movies, family whatever the case is, usually a good amount, maybe more than half of what you're gonna see are children animated content. So yeah, there you have it. Parents are a pretty big deal when it comes to children's media. Parents bring in the money, parents accompany their kids to the movies. The economic standard has to keep in mind the adult audience too. So animation is a great way to introduce horror elements for children, but it can't be anything torture-based or horrific because it won't go well with parent adult audiences. Two intended audience to keep in mind here. So while keeping the aforementioned definition of horror and children content in mind and revisiting old children horror content that I watched when I was younger that are G and PG rated, here are my takeaways. Helping to answer my first question, how is horror implemented in children films? Through gothic aesthetic, perhaps from their clothing or backgrounds, through the aspect of death, such as corpses, ghosts, and monsters, and the supernatural, like magic being the driving force. Certain elements that pre-exist in this genre already, and you can see this heavily in horror literature, such as Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House, Stephen King's It, or Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or even movies like The Ring, Pet Sematary, or Ouija, which differ to movies like Scream that use more of a serial killer approach. Included elements outside the horror genre sphere would be comedy. Nothing screams horror movie than a good laugh for kids. They have to balance between the horror elements aimed to scare kids, but not too much to not tip towards what you'll see for older audiences. So doing it in a more subtle and age-appropriate way. We already discussed that these movies focus on the supernatural over killers, as it is these monsters that physically represent their childhood fear, aka the monster under your bed or ghost, but they also employ techniques of tension, suspense, and mystery to allure and thrill kids. I think the perception of children's animated content having to be safe and not outwardly scary is true. A lot of children's books utilizes monsters, ghosts, witches, and a dark atmosphere while telling a cautionary tale seen a lot in early and darker fairy tales and or folktale stories. And with the range of ages being wide, you will have your safe, lighthearted, and not truly terrifying horror movies, while at the same time you'll have movies leaning towards an older children audience that focuses on the concept of death, like in Monster House, Frankenweenie, and Paranorman. You can be family-friendly, child-friendly, without sacrificing the horror impact. Gravity Fall comes to mind, depicting the mystery of the town, its people, and the magical artifacts with comedy and humor. This is why the horror genre in children media works. Then answering my second question, is that mix good? It's that balance, but not only that, it's overcoming fear, becoming more resilient, and teaching kids a lesson. Fear of the dark, fear of a haunted house, fear of monsters, fear of losing a loved one, fear of strangers, or fear of anything else that scares children or makes it harder for them to understand the unknown that is occurring. R.L. Stine Goosebumps is a good example that depicts these worries and anxieties of loss, isolation, identity, not being believed by guardian figures, within a space of also showing witches, cursed objects, ghosts, puppets, dolls, or werewolves, and showing the protagonist overcoming that fear. Keeping the fear, common childhood fears and anxieties at a minimum and manageable level that is easy to replicate for future books and future stories. And this notion, this motto, is what a lot of media for children horror have done. Minimum and manageable threats and violence that are intense enough but ends with resilience and bravery. There's a balance of these elements along with humor that lightens the more scarier aspects, allowing a mix of depicting fears, excitement, and a sense of security. To end, my favorite horror stories for kids or older audiences are psychological horror stories that use the genre for contemporary and social commentary, or are more than what it seems, and the true underlining story and or message are revealed after multiple watches. Coraline came out 15 years ago, at least the movie did, and still I can go on YouTube or TikTok and someone is talking about something new in regards to the movie. Mistrust, separation, stranger danger, like Coraline is just another bucket of worms within the genre itself. The horror genre, though it has found its footing in children media, it doesn't exist without its criticisms. Similar to maybe the action genre that depicts heavy violence, overexposure to horror elements may affect a child's mental health, behavior, and or emotional state. Children are vulnerable and impressionable, and so two things can be true, and the effects on children should be monitored like any other media by the parent. Look for those ratings, guys. The horror genre in children media is able to depict the horror elements in a positive and approachable way for children and parents. And it's working well because time and time again, there are more movies being released. And when done right, you can even get movies that older audiences can treasure. And that is it for this video. Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. What is your favorite childhood scary / horror movie, TV show, whatever the case is? I don't know if I have a favorite one. The ones that my sisters and I used to rewatch and still do every year on Halloween or within the Halloween month, specifically for the movies, were Monster House, Frankenweenie, and Paranorman. Thank you guys so much for watching. It truly means a lot. Jen and I will see you in another video. Have an amazing day. Peace. Bye, guys. And remember, stay a kid at heart. Oh, and P.S. I'll be linking down our horror, Halloween, scary playlists across both this channel and our art channel for all of those type of content. So if you guys want to check it out, it will be down below. So happy Halloween.